As we go to our guest line and bring on our good friend Mike McAllister, who will join me on the TV version of Orange Nation tonight, which is what we were working on there before the show started. Mike, great to have you on as always. A lot to get to. Let's start with this basketball game. What do you make of what you have seen through 3 games? It's it's been tough to watch in spots, but the team has found a way to win 3 in a row. What do you make of it?
Well, I'll tell you this. I was pretty down on what I had seen in the first 2 games and pretty down by what I saw in the first half against Youngstown State. Weirdly, from watching the second half and the overtimes, I felt encouraged. And I think the reason why is they were much better defensively, got much better offensively. They actually shot a higher percentage in the second half compared to the first half, in the first overtime compared to the second half, and in the second overtime compared to the first overtime. So their shooting percentage kept going up as the game was going along. It felt like after halftime, they basically controlled the rest of that game, and that would have been, if they had played that way the entire game, that probably would have been a comfortable double-digit type of a win. It just took them a while to get there, but I saw some encouraging things defensively. It felt like they got a little bit out of their funk offensively. Jaquan Carlos, I thought, showed better ability as an on-ball defender in the overtime periods, which was encouraging. So even though, yes, there's a lot of negative that you can harp on, the defense certainly needs to continue to improve. But after the second half and the overtimes, I came away saying, all right, I can see how this team can continue to grow and get better as the season goes along.
And if they make their free throws, free throws were obviously a major issue, especially in that second half. They make their free throws, chances are that game doesn't even go into overtime. So I'm with you. I think there were some encouraging things, and maybe they found something in the second half in overtime that they can carry with them down to New York, and maybe it looks different when they take on Texas.
Sure.
JJ, we've been talking about, is there a guy on this team who could take over a game? And if you need a basket, who's the guy? And I think we all kind of threw JJ out, but we didn't say it with confidence because we were like, well, we think he has the ability to do it. We saw him do it on Saturday. Do you think this could be kind of like a breakout game, for lack of a better term, for JJ moving forward, that, we're going to see a more aggressive player now after he did this?
I hope that it does, because I think if he becomes that guy, it makes this team that much better. It was kind of the one question mark offensively that we had on this team, is we felt like there'd be better shooting. We felt like there'd be better passing. They had a pure point guard. They've got a passing big. They've got a low post threat. And the big question was, we knew last year if it came down to crunch time, it was going to Judah Mintz. This year, who was that guy? And could it be Chris Bell? Could it be JJ? Bell is a little bit more reliant on other people creating shots for him, so it made more sense that it would be JJ. And the fact that we saw him take over in a situation where his team needed him to. They were down at halftime, needed someone to kind of give him that spark. He took over, gave him that spark, and everything kind of, rolled from there. That's very encouraging, I think, to the way that he can be for the rest of the season. Now, here's where it can become a bit of an issue, is if we don't see that for 4 or 5 games and then we see it once. And then we don't see it for 4 or 5 games and then we see it once. Then it becomes one of those inconsistent, is he or isn't he type of a situations. If he can consistently be that, then I think that makes this Syracuse team that much better. And I think it starts going into this game against Texas. If he's more aggressive right from the start and he helps them be competitive throughout that game, win or lose, then you feel really good about where this team is headed.
The name Naheem McLeod came up a little bit earlier with one of our callers, and Paulie says that he thinks there's a role for. I agree. I mean, I think there's a role for him. I think we're going to see him. I just don't know how big of a role that will be. What do you expect from Naheem McLeod this season, and when do you think we'll start seeing consistent minutes out of him?
I don't know for sure, but I'm wondering is there some sort of lingering injury type of issue from what he dealt with last year, and that he's just not really at 100%, and because they have a little bit more depth there, they don't need to throw him out there when he's not 100%, and Eddie can play 35 minutes a game as long as he stays out of foul trouble, and then you can throw in Freeman and Mastorovich in there as the backups, even Jair Davis at times, depending on the opponent. that gives you a little bit more leeway that you can be a little bit more patient with a guy like Naheem McLeod. But I certainly think that he's got the ability to come out and play in some capacity. I don't know if that's going to mean 15 minutes a game. It might mean 5 to 10 minutes a game. But, if he's fully healthy and ready to go, he gives you something that no one else on the team does, which is rim protection. And we know that was a concern going into the season. It's been a little bit of an issue so far. So is he someone that can come in and give you 10 minutes a game and block shots, a couple for a little bit and make the rim something that teams don't attack, at least while he's in there as aggressively? Sure, I think there's a role for him for that, but it all starts with assuming he's fully healthy, and then it really depends on how he performs in practice. If he doesn't perform in practice, it doesn't matter what we think his role can be and what his skill set is.
You brought up rim protection. Why can't Eddie Lampkin be that guy? Like, you don't need him blocking shots, but he's not there on it. And I could be wrong, but does it not appear to you that he's not there on rotations on defense?
I certainly understand that. Now, here's what I'll say. I think when Youngstown State's big man, their 7'3" guy, got into foul trouble, the guys that they brought in were more stretch guys that kind of played a little bit on the perimeter. They didn't just stay kind of down in the paint and be a kind of a traditional low post big. And that brought Eddie Lampkin out away from the rim a little bit. And so that played a role in terms of where he was as well. Now, does that mean that can he get better in terms of his rotation and defensive recognition and being at least in the way when teams drive the lane? Sure. But I did think that he was a little bit better with that in the second half and in the overtimes than what he was in the first, 2.5 games.
Let's switch gears. Let's talk a little football while we have you. And, I mean, you've been doing this a long time. You know that Syracuse doesn't win 8 regular season games very often, right? It happened in 2018. The previous time, I believe, was 2001. And now if they beat UConn, it'll be the third time, that they've done it in the last, 23 years. Fran Brown downplayed it. How big of a deal, though, do you think it actually is, Mike? Let's assume they beat UConn. They get to 8 or more wins in the regular season. How big of a deal is that for this program?
I think it's, it might not be a big deal to Fran because I think his goals are higher than that. And so even though he, I think, would have an understanding of what Syracuse has been for the last 2 decades and the fact that it's only the third time in that time frame that they would have gotten 8 wins, he didn't go into the season thinking, hey, let's get to 8 wins and we'll be pretty happy. He came in saying, let's go undefeated and go for the ACC championship. So the 8 wins isn't what his ultimate goals are, and so that's why I think he's downplaying it a little bit. But as far as, if you want to talk about program buzz and hype and fan support into the future and all those types of things, getting to 8 wins because it hasn't happened much is a big deal in that if they had only gotten to 7, it feels like a lot of the fans that bought in and were giving this Fran Brown thing a chance would have said, it's still the same old, and maybe jumped off the bandwagon. You get to 8 wins in year 1, get to a good bowl game. If you find a way to pull off an upset against Miami and get to 9, even better, then I think that's when people can say, all right, it's year 1. They're building the foundation. I saw a lot of good things. They won games in November. They won games on the road in November. They won multiple road conference games. There's a lot of boxes that they have checked, and that 8-win mark is another one of them that can get those people who might still be on the fence or still kind of monitoring how this goes. It can get them fully onto the side of this is going a different direction than what it has in years past. All
right, real quick, because we're running out of time, but along those lines, you say, it resonates with the fans. What about, you're a recruiting guy. How does this resonate with recruits, the fact that, it looks like they're going to win 8 or more games?
The more you win, the better, because Fran Brown is going to preach a lot of the things that he does on the recruiting trail. I'm building more than just a football team. It's about building you as a man and all those types of things, the relationship he builds. But when you can point to on the field success, the more you can do that, then the better it helps. Especially, it's not so much with those 3-star recruits that Syracuse has been getting, even if the 3 stars that they're getting are a tick up from what they had been. But it's trying to get those 4-star recruits that have been a struggle for Syracuse in the past that Fran Brown got it when he first took the job. He's got another one committed that is expected to sign in a couple of weeks. it helps with those guys for the rest of this recruiting class and future recruiting classes that you can point to on-field success and say, look, we are building exactly what I told you we are.
All right, Mike.
Have Kyle McCord's numbers done enough, do you think, to help this team without wins or losses? What they've done with Kyle McCord, has that been enough, do you think, that they can go out and get a quarterback in the transfer portal for next year?
Yes, but NIL is still going to be a factor there because there's still going to be, the number one quarterback in the transfer portal is still going to command quite a bit of money. So, this situation with Kyle McCord, it worked out for Syracuse and they lucked out a little bit in being able to get him. I don't know if the exact same situation is going to present itself again, but certainly the ability to say, look what he did when he came here. That certainly will be attractive to quarterbacks in the transfer portal.
All right, Mike, great stuff. We look forward to seeing you tonight on the TV version of Orange Nation.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, Mike McAllister joining us. With that, we'll hit a timeout. We'll get through our final break of hour number one. We've got Tino. We've got Fran Brown coming up at the top of hour number two. I'm in the chat reading about Dino. That's why he was on top of mine there. Fran Brown's press conference coming up at 1 o'clock. Back after this on ESPN Radio.